Hello and welcome to Bloodworth Miniatures. Today we are going to take a look at putting together the Void Dragon and taking a look at its rules and seeing how it may or may not fit into your army. Okay, so just some comments on the model assembly itself. This is sort of a delicate model, especially with the arcs of energy and the rubble in the base area. At first it almost seems like it doesn't go together, but as you follow the instructions, I found it almost is kind of reminds me of like a web like structure, to build it out. In any case, it does feel a little flimsy. I've played with it a little bit since putting it together and painting it, and it hasn't fallen apart on me, but I would definitely be careful about catching like the spear on anything when transport or the wings, because it is a very kind of pokey large model. But yeah, that aside, looking at the rules here, so Satan Shard of the Void Dragon, it's an 18 power level model. I think that makes sense. All of the shards are 18 power level except for the Transcendent Satan, which is only power level 14. So, you know, they all have kind of a equal power rating. As far as the stat line goes, movement 8, not too bad. It's the same as the Deceiver and the Nightbringer, so, you know, that makes sense. Weapon skill, ballistic skill, 2 up. Same as the Deceiver and the Nightbringer, so that's good. Strength 7. Strength 6. Toughness 7. Strength 6, the Nightbringer's got Strength 7. So, you know, it would be nice to see that on the Void Dragon, but really there's a lot on the Void Dragon that's already quite good, so keep that in mind. Toughness 7 is the same as all the other Satan shards. Wounds 9, so it's the same as the Deceiver and as the Nightbringer for wounds as well. And its attacks is 5, so it's got the same as the Deceiver. The Nightbringer has 6 attacks, but the Nightbringer is a little bit more of a melee model, so that kind of makes sense. Now, taking a look at the weapons. So first we'll look at the shooting. Spear of the Void Dragon shooting. So it's got a shooting profile and a melee profile. So the shooting profile is a 12-inch range. So it's not a very far range, but with the 18-inch movement, it means you can theoretically hit stuff that's just under 20 inches away, you know, on your turn 1. So it's not too bad. Heavy 1. So it's just the 1 attack. But it is at strength 9, AP minus 4, which is devastating, and damages D6. Now, its abilities in the gun is the really important part of this model. So each time an attack is made with this weapon, if a hit is scored, draw a straight line between the closest point of this model's base or hull and that of the closest model in the target unit. Make one roll against the target unit, and each other unit this line passes over. Each time an attack made with this weapon is allocated to a vehicle model, that attack has a damage characteristic of D3 plus 3. So, basically, you get to draw a straight line from the closest point on the thing that you're targeting and to your base, and you can hit everything that's in between. So as far as I know, the only other thing in the game that can do that is Moritarian's Lantern Pistol. So that's pretty unique by itself. It means that you can tag extra units with your weapon. So even though it's only a heavy one, maybe you can actually hit a couple of different units, which is pretty amazing. And that vehicle D3 plus 3 is pretty substantial. Nothing sucks like shooting like a multi-melta and getting 1 wound, you know, like that never feels good. So the fact that it's a D3 plus 3 on vehicles is quite good. Obviously, there's going to be a bit of a theme for vehicles with this model, so we'll go over that with the Spear of the Void Dragon. So the melee version of it. So it's strength plus 3, which puts it at strength 9. So it's melee and its gun are both at strength 9, which is quite good. AP minus 4 again, damage D6 again. And there's 5 of these, which is pretty great. Each time an attack with this weapon is allocated to a vehicle model, that attack has a damage characteristic of D3 plus 3. So again, you're getting like at least 4 damage for each one of the attacks that makes it through, which is fabulous. And then you got the Canoptic Tail Blades, which is its additional melee weapon. It's user, so it's only strength 6, which is still okay, like against infantry and stuff. AP minus 2, still not bad. Damage 1. And each time the bearer fights, it makes D6 additional attacks with this weapon. So I would say a lot of the time this isn't going to score anything against a vehicle. You might get an extra damage through if you're really lucky. But this is really good if you have a vehicle and the infantry that was near it in melee combat. So you throw your Canoptic Tail Blades at the infantry and the Sphere of the Void Dragon at the tank. That's pretty much how I see this being used. So that goes over all the Void Dragon's weapons. Next, we're going to go over the abilities of the Void Dragon himself. So he's got Living Metal. At the beginning of your command phase, he regains 1 lost wound, which is really great, especially when you pair it with his other ability, Necrodermis. So Necrodermis says this model has a 4-up invul save, which is quite good. In addition, this model cannot lose more than 3 wounds in the same phase. Any wounds that would be lost after that point are not lost. So this is really great, especially if you're going turn 2. Because everybody knows going turn 2 is a bit of a disadvantage. Like whatever your biggest threat on the board is, it could get targeted by your opponent's entire army. And if so, it might get wiped off the board. However, with Necrodermis, they would need to be able to deal 3 wounds during the shooting phase, deal 3 wounds during the melee phase, and deal 3 wounds during the psychic phase, and or if they have effects during the movement phase, to be able to actually kill the Void Dragon. And since the Void Dragon doesn't have sort of a staggered profile, even if he only has 1 wound left over, on turn 2, you should theoretically be able to fly over and bash the crap out of their tank. It is a very strong ability, and paired with Living Metal, it really gives some sustainability to this model. Plus a 4-up invul save just means 50% of the anti-tank or anti-monster weaponry that your opponents fire at the Void Dragon aren't going to matter. So that's pretty amazing. Next, we're looking at Reality Unravels. So when this model is destroyed, you roll a 1d6 before removing it from play, so it's kind of like explodes. On a 4-up, it explodes to a 50-50 chance, and each unit within 6 inches suffers D3 mortal wounds. So the idea of this model is usually you're flying it right into your enemy's lines. You're trying to take out their biggest tank or some of their tanks, and maybe some of their infantry along the way, with the laser beam out of the Void Dragon or the Canoptic Tail Blades. And if you get overwhelmed, there's still a very good chance that you could explode and do some more damage on your way out, which is fabulous. So next we're going to do go over matter absorption. So I mentioned how vehicles is a theme with this model. So at the end of each phase, roll a d6 for each enemy vehicle model destroyed as a result of an attack by this model, or a Satan power used by this model in that phase. For each 2-up, this model regains 1 lost wound to a maximum of 3 regained wounds per phase. So this model can heal itself. It kills tanks and gets healed by eating tanks, which is, what could be better than that, really? That it's geared towards what it's doing. So it's all you can ask for in an anti-tank model, as far as I'm concerned. So next we're going to go over the Enslaved Star God. So the Enslaved Star God, this model can never have a relic or a warlord trait. In addition, enemy models can ignore the Lookout Sir rule when selecting this model as targets for ranged attack. So that's the only downside of the model, really. As far as I can see, well, and the points. Like, it's 350 points. So, but other than that, everything else looks pretty great on this model. So, but yeah, like, do you really need the Lookout Sir when you have Necrodermis? I don't know. Maybe you don't. So, next we'll look at the powers of the C'tan. This model knows the Voltaic Storm C'tan power and one other C'tan power from the powers of the C'tan on page 68. At the end of your movement phase, if this model did not advance or fall back that phase, it can use 2 C'tan powers it knows. It cannot use the same C'tan power more than once per turn. So, just to go over what the C'tan powers do. Well, not all of the C'tan powers, but specifically the Voltaic Storm C'tan power. I'm just going to quickly flip back to that page. So, Voltaic Storm. So there's a nice little description here. This can only be taken by the Void Dragon. So when the C'tan points are points 1 impervious hand, foes reel as their air stings with a monstrous whine. The awful sound builds, then erupts into a sudden and ferocious storm of emerald lightning to annihilate all it touches. So he shoots a big old lightning bolt. Select one enemy unit within 18 inches and visible to this C'tan shard. An enemy character unit with a wounds characteristic of 9 or less cannot be selected for this power while it is within 3 inches of another enemy unit, unless that character unit is the closest visible enemy unit. So you can't snipe characters with this, but that's okay. What matters is that you're targeting vehicles. So you roll a d6. On a 2-up, that unit suffers d3 mortal wounds. It suffers d6 mortal wounds instead if it has the vehicle keyword, and until the start of your next turn, if that unit is a vehicle whose characteristics change as it loses wounds, it halves the number of wounds it has remaining when determining what characteristics to use. So even if this does 1 mortal wound, you're going to take that wound off and then you're going to divide by 2, and if they have a wounds profile, it's going to be looking at the lower one. So if you remember, I said there's a vehicles theme with the Void Dragon. There really is. There's no less than 4 things on this model that specifically care about hitting vehicles. So last we'll just go over the keywords it has. So it's Necrons for the faction keywords. Monster, character, fly, C'tan shard of the Void Dragon. So monster and fly is relevant. So with monster, if I understand correctly, that means he doesn't have a -1 when shooting the heavy one gun he has when he moves. And with fly, he doesn't really care about terrain. So this guy flies over the board, starts mutilating your opponent's vehicles. He gets healed off of mutilating your opponent's vehicles. He gets bonus damage for melee and shooting and C'tan shard powers against vehicles. I mean, if you're going to spend any amount of points on anti-tank, and those amount of points is greater than or equal to 350 points, like, you might as well take the Void Dragon. You might as well, because it is very powerful. The only way I'd say that it's not going to be powerful is if your opponent is like Chaos Demons and they're not taking any demon engines. You know, because most armies have a tank. Most armies have some kind of vehicle that they're bringing, whether it's for transport, whether it's heavy support. They have some kind of vehicles. and this thing eats those vehicles for breakfast, literally. So that's my take on the Satan Shard. I hope you've enjoyed the background here while I've been putting together the model, maybe seen some of the areas where I struggled, and hopefully you can learn from that too. But it's up to you, of course, whether or not you want to include it in your list. Thanks again for joining us here at Bloodworth Miniatures and putting together the Void Dragon. I hope the commentary on the rules is helpful for you, and remember that you and your hobby time is worth it.